panel with a combination of scientists, a combination of like board representatives, indigenous people, organizations, really understanding that it's the time for a paradigm change. It's the time for not only to be discussing in these walls the SDGs, but the right and the right to the access to water, but really the right to water and the right of water. I think that's what's most important. And I'm here representing a really important movement that is the Rights of Nature movement. That is a movement that is really pushing forward the idea that nature is it's not an object that we exploit, the subject that we respect. And hence here we're talking about water. And water is a living entity, a living being, and we need to respect that she has inherent rights. And we're going to be listening about that today, really acknowledging that it's not only Ecuador that has in the Constitution, but now there are 37 countries that recognize the rights of nature around the world. And we are really, really happy that this movement is growing so much. As I was saying, I represent the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. This is a network that has more than 5,000 members around the world, more than 600 organizations, representatives in every continent, really promoting this paradigm change that Monty was talking about. So thank you for coming, thank you for being here. And I'm gonna go ahead and give the word first to Nathan Lujan. I'm going to just tell a little bit about each of our panelists before they speak, and remind all of our speakers that we have 7 minutes for each presentation. So Nathan Lujan is a biologist, curator, and photographer whose research seeks to understand how tropical rivers create and sustain biodiversity. His ongoing fieldwork in Marañón, Pastaza, and Napo rivers of the Western Amazon, curator of fishes at the Royal Ontario Museum, and assistant professor in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology department at University of Toronto. Nathan, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Natalia. It's a tremendous honor to be here on a platform with such distinguished community leaders and guests from around the world. And I'm here to speak not so much the legal concerns. Obviously, there's a lot of the concerns today are going to be about legal frameworks. That's not my expertise. My expertise is in the fishes and biodiversity of freshwater ecosystems, particularly those of the neotropics. So I've spent 20 years exploring and studying rivers throughout tropical South America. And today I as curator at the Royal Ontario Museum, I oversee a collection of 1.5 million fish specimens that have been collected over a century and that serve as one of the most important kinds of resources for understanding the state of nature and the state of nature through time. One of the big observations that I like to emphasize here is just how complicated these systems are, how little we know about them, and how much we need an improved legal and regulatory framework to facilitate international collaboration to study these ecosystems and understand these ecosystems. And there are two examples that I like to raise to illustrate just the interconnectedness of these systems and the importance of research. So rivers are integrators across the landscape, they're corridors across the landscape. They connect ecosystems from high elevations in the Andes, for example, in the Amazon to the Amazonian lowlands, and they cross through myriad ecosystems and are exposed to myriad species across their path. Okay. Good reminder. So one of the examples that I'd like to mention, it comes from early in my career and that inspired a lot of my research. And that was an experience that I had as a young biologist working actually for a power company, the largest public power company in the United States, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which manages one of the most biodiverse watersheds in the United States, the Tennessee River watershed, which is an epicenter of biodiversity throughout the Northern Hemisphere. TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, manages the watershed of the Tennessee Valley using a system called an index of biotic integrity, where biologists go into the field, they sample fishes and they sample macroinvertebrates and use a system that can quantify the balance of the fish community and different components of the fish community and generate a numerical score that's replicable that assesses the quality of the river, but with the goal of assessing the quality of the watershed. So we were managing a land area by monitoring the biotic community at the outpipe of that watershed. And that speaks to how the fish community integrates impacts from not just the water, but from land use throughout the watershed. And so by understanding the fish community, by understanding how to identify species and the ecological roles that those species fulfill in the ecosystem, we can determine what impacts occur in the watershed. So, and for PDA, they found this to be a cost-effective measure. They were not required to use this kind of approach, but it was cost-effective. So that inspired a lot of my research. I wanted to bring that approach to the neotropics to understand the diversity of fishes, the ecological roles of these fishes, and develop a framework of science to then develop a tool like what I used early in my career with TVA. But in the neotropics, in the Amazon, in Orinoco, and the Essequibo, and the Magdalena, these systems are so incredibly diverse. We're decades behind where the Tennessee Valley was when I started. There are an estimated 3,000 undescribed species, just fish species in the Amazon. We don't even know what all these species are, let alone what ecological role they serve in the environment. So this requires this requires a lot of international cooperation. I work with local scientists in each country and local peoples, but oftentimes our work is inhibited by kind of inadequate permitting processes and restrictions on the international trade in species that inherit international collaboration research. One of the goals of my projects now in the Marañón and the Napo is to develop a database for environmental DNA. Many people might have heard of environmental DNA. For a very highly biodiverse system like the Amazon, environmental DNA is a miraculous technology. We can take from a little water sample an assay, an indication of all of the species that live in the watershed, contributing to that point in the river. The challenge is when we work in the tropics and very biodiverse tropical ecosystems, up to 70% of the sequences that we get, the DNA sequences, we don't know what they belong to. We just know that they're fragments of DNA. We haven't even figured out yet the basic framework of diversity that links to DNA that then allows us to use this incredible tool to monitor fresh waters. Just one final observation related to that lack of knowledge. Rivers and entire ecosystems are disappearing without us having any knowledge of what occurs there. So there are entire rivers that are getting obliterated in parts of Peru, in parts of Guyana, in parts of Ecuador, in parts of Colombia, by gold mining, placer mining. So one of the distinguishing characteristics of rivers is that they are these longitudinal gradients that carry particles from headwaters, and those particles change over time and get deposited at various points in the lowlands. And the process is what accumulates gold deposits in the lowlands, downstream of the Andes, downstream of the Guyana Shield. And although that process is very important for things like carbon and facilitate the entire aquatic ecosystem, it also leads to this distribution of gold that then is harvested by placer mining that destroys the sediments, destroys the biodiversity, destroys the riverbank, deforests the watershed, and is really an abomination for freshwater ecosystems, especially in the neotropics. So the rights of nature kind of approaching these ecosystems as a whole, and recognizing their complexity, recognizing the need to periodically take samples and use those samples to assess and monitor the health in the revised legal framework. And
thank you so much, Nathan, for that. I don't think we're going to have time for questions later, but we'll like to be speaking also about how does law and the traditional law that can protect ecosystems, or we need to go beyond that. I think that's a really important question to ask the scientific community, if like the existing law has been able to address the problems, and how can we go beyond that. But we'll see if we can have time to be like answering more questions later. We're now going to listen to Tom Goldtooth. Tom Goldtooth is the executive director of the Indigenous Environmental Network at an NGO based in Bemidji, Minnesota, near the border of the United States and Canada. He's a social change maker within the Native American community for over 36 years. Tom has become an internationally renowned environmental, climate, and economic justice leader, working with many Indigenous people and social movements around the world. And we have also the pleasure of having Tom as part of our executive committee at GUARD. Now we would like to talk about the earth law as a fundamental part of the Indigenous worldview, and would like to talk to you and learn about you. If the SDGs have been enough, and how and the rights of nature, the rights of water is the way to go beyond that, especially considering Indigenous world. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Mary, and I was thinking when just now of a presence right now throughout the world. We just ended, well, still continuing legally with lawsuits on Enbridge out of Canada that got approval, and for building a crude oil pipeline through our territories in northern Minnesota, going to the state of Wisconsin, an area that we call in Minnesota the land of 10,000 lakes, a lot of water. And as we all know, those that have studied oil pipelines, every pipeline, eventually the infrastructure will weaken and will leak. It's just a matter of when. In a very precious and pristine area where water is very important, spiritual. We have traditional natural foods such as tea, which is in Dakota language, but in Ojibwe is Manoman. So we are very concerned about how does society recognize the spirit? How do they recognize the voice of the water, of the lakes, the streams, the wetlands? They have no way of understanding what we understand. We are a society of two basically cosmologies, our own indigenous cosmology and that of the dominant world. We don't understand each other. So we must end right now this escalating violence being perpetrated against our Mother Earth, all life and peoples. Our Indigenous Environmental Network is concerned of the sign of more wars and conflict that cause deep suffering and further drive the extraction of fossil fuels. We're seeing that now. Minerals and metals of empty pledges from international negotiations on climate and biodiversity. So RIN shakes the hands of the people of Panama that joined Bolivia, New Zealand, Bangladesh, Ecuador, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, among other countries which have issued court decisions, enacted laws, or amended their constitutions, recognizing the legal rights of nature. We like to see that as indigenous peoples. And we shake the hands of Chile for their mobilization and drafting of a new constitution that also recognizes nature. So we encourage this, we encourage them as indigenous people in our movement globally in their efforts to adopt governance models that give equal respect to all life, all of our relations of life, such as animals and plants, ecosystem, and as the two-legged human beings as well, the human rights and the collective rights of indigenous people, especially water. So we can win all of our indigenous brothers and sisters in the world who remind us that all life, the ecosystems on our Mother Earth are deeply related to each other, intertwined. When I said Haumitakiapi, that means we are all related with all life. So we rejoice the ongoing initiatives to restore and recognize the territorial integrity and the spirits of the rivers and the lakes, the specific natural areas, the catches and the springs, such as the Wakanoi River in the homelands of our Maori people, and the Magpie River in Canada, the Klamath River in California. And we especially shake the hands of the work of the indigenous peoples to restore their rights and customary laws, such as the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma. So a number of years ago, we met with indigenous peoples and non-indigenous peoples to articulate a shared vision toward a new economy that's based on living in balance with natural systems that we understand, our own indigenous natural laws, where the rights of, the system of the matrix, I call it, of colonization, where the rights of humans do not extend, and where there's a domination of nature, domination of Mother Earth, in the same way that there's patriarchy and male dominance over their women, is the same value system of how governments of the world treat Mother Earth. So at that time, we questioned, the viability of a global economy where jurisprudence places property rights above all. And these were some of the fundamental values that we saw in this rights of nature movement that's looking for a new paradigm, paradigm that recognized that sacredness of life itself, of the rivers. So I was part of a convening of the Global Alliance on Rights of Nature in Italy at the development of a declaration, the Seed of Sina Declaration, where it reminded us in this movement that we are united and that we have to put a call out to trust in a movement that's changing the matrix as part of systematic change. Colonial laws and policies cannot stop the loss of biodiversity and the poisoning of soils, land, waters, and air, because they're grounded in the fiction of the natural world as property, as resources for human desires, the privatization, the commodification, and legalized enslavement of Mother Earth is very critical and very serious, including the enslavement of our water, our hydro systems, becoming part of corporate property. This has to end. So as the water and Mother Earth being a resource of life, not a resource, being a source of life, but not a resource. All waters are for nourishment, learning, and life. In our Dakota spiritual values, we know what Mini Wachoni means, that came out of standing block as far as the global call to reevaluate relationship with the sacredness of Mother Earth, the female creative natural laws. And that means it's time when life is coming this way, when the mother is passing the water and the baby is coming. That's the water of life. That's how we give aspiration to sitting here of a movement that's reevaluating what its relationship is with the sacredness of Mother Earth. So as Indigenous people, we are very concerned as we are part of this movement to strengthen the perspective within the rights of nature movement. The rights of nature movement must be committed to advancing Indigenous rights, sovereignty, and jurisprudence, and other non-rights-based pathways found in customary law and traditional Indigenous knowledge. I must say, in our participation of GARN, we all share similar objective to reject all forms of depredation, exploitation, abuse, contamination of water system, and urge real action to halt water extraction, water contamination, water diversion, water loss from a changing climate and global warming and biodiversity loss. and threats to our indigenous peoples and the sacredness of our Mother Earth. But we also have to stand in defense of our water defenders, our water protectors, our earth defenders, because there's a movement to criminalize those people that stand in defense of the sacredness of our rivers and our water system. So we are here to give voice to this of indigenous peoples that we work with and call for society and even the sustainable development goals to recognize and adopt the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. So we have existed, my final comment is, we have existed as indigenous people since time immemorial, and we have indigenous knowledge that informs indigenous spiritual, social, and political frameworks that are intrinsically tied to our land, our sky, and our water. It's a complex set of interrelationships, but it places us in the midst of pushing forward our inherent relationship jurisprudence. It's very important as we work with Natty, with Garn, and many of the people here. So thank you very much, and we're here to continue to work together for the protection of the future of generations.
Thank you, Tom. Just a little reminder, the next three speakers are going to be speaking in Spanish. We do have translation through Zoom, and we have in your devices, if someone is not yet connected, there's a QR code that you can connect to Zoom and have the access to translation. I'll be speaking their biography in English, but I'll be doing the questions in Spanish, so make sure that you are connected to translation for that. Our next speaker is Josefina Tunki. She's the president of the Shuar Arutan people, the Pesha of the Ecuadorian Amazon. She's called among people a brave woman. Josefina has been the first Shuar female leader, and she firmly stands in defense of the Amazon against extractive industries. She's also leading the defense of the Santiago River against a mega dam. It's a pleasure for me to be presenting to Josefina. Y Josefina, quisiera que nos hables hoy un poco de tu trabajo en la Amazonía, el trabajo de las comunidades Shuar, y que nos cuentes además del rol del activismo en la implementación real de los derechos de la naturaleza y tu lectura también de qué es lo que ha pasado en nuestro país, compartimos país, sobre el tema de los derechos de la naturaleza, qué se puede avanzar y cómo lo ven los pueblos indígenas. Gracias, Josefina, por estar con nosotros.
Gracias. Muy buenas tardes. Primeramente.
In the corner, it has like a little button.
Like, oh, there you go.
Quiero saludar y agradecer a los organizadores a nivel mundial que están presentes y también a los hermanos indígenas o nacionalidades que vienen a nivel mundial. Y también a todos que estamos aquí, porque es el interés de todos, no solo de pueblos indígenas. Bueno, la puntualidad de hoy es para analizar de manera colectiva sobre el tema del agua en estos pueblos que muchos días estamos llevando. Soy Shuar del Ecuador, de la Amazonía, que está ubicado en la Cordillera del Cóndor y Cordillera Cutucú y Xaime, al norte, donde que nace el río Gran Amazonas. Somos pueblos autónomos en América, quiero decir puntual, porque en América, antes de la conquista de los 500 años, en nuestras manos, el mundo, la planeta, en manos de indígenas, no estaba contaminada, el agua, ni la tierra. Pero lamentablemente, cuando ya comenzó la conquista, llegó en América la contaminación. Y actualmente con las industrias como las mineras, las petroleras, hidroeléctricas, está afectando mucho todo el territorio indigenado a nivel mundial. más contaminación hay en los países donde que no estamos viviendo los indígenas. En la actualidad, muy reducido, hay un espacio de biodiversidad donde que todavía hay agua dulce, lo que estamos preocupados que aún no están contaminados. En mi territorio, en la Amazonía, en el Ecuador, hay unas empresas petroleras, mineras, hidroeléctricas, especialmente el Hidrorío Santiago, que va a ser una gran potencial si es que la represa se construye, que va a afectar todo el Amazonas. Eso nos preocupa a todos los pueblos indígenas porque en diferentes países del mundo donde que se construye las hidroeléctricas, los ríos se secan, los ríos se contaminan porque nacen algas y sabemos muy bien que esas algas no son beneficiosos ni para seres humanos ni para los peces. En eso estamos nosotros preocupados como pueblos amazónicos y también en otros países del mundo, los indígenas, para poder sostener a la planeta. Y por ende estamos en la actualidad los líderes y lideresas, digo toda la verdad, estamos siendo perseguidos de mismos gobiernos de nuestros países y después de las empresas. Hay muchos hombres y mujeres, especialmente mujeres, están siendo matadas, discriminadas, siendo perseguidas. Muchos líderes día a día a nivel mundial estamos siendo asesinados, estamos siendo violados nuestros derechos. Los indígenas también estamos bajo los mismos derechos y pido para al mundo que nos respeten, que nos consideren, porque nosotros estamos viviendo en nuestras tierras, no estamos invadiendo los territorios, estamos asentados en nuestros territorios autónomos y milenarios. Queremos vivir. Entonces, el compromiso unánime, invito a todos, a todas, sin distinción de raza ni color humana, nuestro compromiso es cuidar, dedicarnos de manera unida, cómo salvar lo poco que nos queda, agua dulce o agua pura a nivel mundial. Porque el futuro es el presente. Lo que muchas de las veces no analizamos bien. Trabajemos juntos y sin discriminación. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Josefina, por tu intervención. A continuación, tenemos la intervención de Mariluz Kanekiri Murayari. I'm going to read her biography in English. Mariluz Kanekiri Murayari has more than 30 years of experience dedicated to the territorial defense of the Pucamira Nation, to which she belongs in Peru. Throughout this year, she has worked tirelessly in the defense of the Marañón River, which is her home and the home of her ancestors, and her integral territory as the Pucamira Nation. Mariluz, quisiera preguntarte hoy que nos cuentes un poco cuál es la amenaza que está viviendo el río Marañón, que nos cuenta además cuál es el rol de la mujer como lideresa, como defensora de la naturaleza, y además cuál es el rol de las mujeres en la protección especialmente de los ríos. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí hoy.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Soy Mariluz, del pueblo Pucama, Pucamilla, vengo desde la Amazonía peruana, del río Marañón. Nosotras las mujeres estamos trabajando ya más de 30 años en defensa de nuestro territorio ancestral, también defensa de nuestro río Marañón. Nosotras hemos presentado una demanda de amparo en defensa del río Marañón, pidiendo que el río Marañón sea considerado como sujeto de derecho. Y la segunda demanda es pidiendo al gobierno, a los 3 niveles, que den agua, que nos den el acceso de agua potable para todos y todas. Y es un derecho fundamental. Y nosotras, el pueblo Pucama, tiene una relación muy cercana con los ríos, agua. Para nosotras, el río Marañón es muy sagrado, es el corazón de la vida de nosotras. Y nuestra madre naturaleza, también donde están en nuestras plantas, lo llamamos en nuestras farmacias, nuestros mercados, como tienen en la ciudad, ¿no? Los ciberes, el mercado, pero para nosotros, en nuestro territorio, lo tenemos también eso naturalmente. Por eso un pueblo indígena originario no puede tener un pequeño territorio. Tenemos un territorio grande y que es muy valioso, que es nuestro, porque ancestralmente, antes que se creó nuestro país, nuestros ancestros ya lo vivían ahí. Y lo que tenemos es nuestro. Y lo que estamos haciendo nosotras como mujeres, queremos dejar como herencia también a los que vienen, ¿no? En el futuro, los que van a nacer y crecer, los hijos de los que están naciendo, los hijos de la juventud. Para ellos queremos dejar, por eso estamos defendiendo, asegurando, y también no solamente para nosotros, también es para el mundo entero. El río, el agua, es fundamental, es vida. Y para el pueblo Cucama, nosotros tenemos 3 mundos diferentes, en donde vivimos el cielo y bajo del agua, donde viven los seres espirituales, que también para nosotros tenemos familiares ahí. Para el pueblo Cucama hay vida dentro, hay gente. Y por eso le consideramos al río, el espíritu del río es gente. El Puragua es la madre que da vida al río, a las cosas, a todo lo que existe, ¿no? Las lagunas, quebradas. Y como es gente, queremos que lo respeten. Hay seres vivos dentro. Para el pueblo Cucama es fundamental, y en nuestro territorio también, donde la población, nosotros labramos toda planta, que todo alimento que esté en la mesa puesta, es crecido por el agua, ¿no? El agua, cuando llueve, moja nuestra planta, crece, lo cosechamos y eso le tenemos en la mesa para comer. Y todo ser vivo que está dentro de nuestro territorio se merece vivir porque es un ser vivo, merece ser respetado. Yo quisiera que en todos los países hubiera una ley, ¿no? En defensa de nuestra madre naturaleza, porque es un ser vivo, como nosotros y nosotras. Y pedimos nosotras, bueno, personalmente, yo como lideresa, como presidenta de mi organización, como decía la hermana, estoy perseguida, demandada por el gobierno, por defender nuestro territorio, defender los derechos colectivos de nuestra población. Y cada vez que me ven, lo mueven al proceso que yo estoy demandada. Pero gracias a Dios, hay abogados que ya me están defendiendo, que es el IDL, y me da más fuerzas. Nosotras las mujeres somos fuertes, así como nosotras, ¿no? El pueblo Cucama, soy yo, Chakra, y Kama es Teta, que era la madre naturaleza, la tierra, que nos da los alimentos. Estamos lactando por él, y nosotras, Cucama significa eso, ¿no? Yo, tierra, chakra, y Teta, que alimentamos a nuestros hijos. Es un significado muy bonito, y por eso nosotras con fuerza lo defendemos, a pesar de todas las circunstancias que tenemos, dificultades, ahí estamos. Por eso digo yo, entre hermanos indígenas no hay fronteras, sea de donde sea, qué país, lo que sea, estamos unidas, no estaremos unidas. Quisiera una vez más decir que la unidad entre todos los países del mundo entero, quisiera que nos escuchen, que defender la madre naturaleza es defender nuestras propias vidas, las vidas de nuestros hijos, de nuestra generación. Pensar en ellos, porque ellos también se merecen vivir y merecerán vivir, y dejar algo como herencia es fundamental, donde ellos van a tener agua buena para tomar, para alimentar, para vivir, y ellos podrán vivir Nos acordarán algún día si hacemos algo, pero si no hacemos nada, ¿de qué nos van a acordar? De que ellos más adelante, después que nosotras nos morimos, ellos nos van a decir, si nosotros no hacemos nada, ¿qué habrán hecho nuestros ancestros? Por eso estamos muriendo, pero para eso tenemos que hacer algo, para que los que vienen más adelante, nuestra generación tenga algo que decir. Seguiremos cuidando, manteniendo, defendiendo lo que los ancestros nos han dejado. Esto es importante. Como mujeres, tenemos que pensar, nosotras, bueno, en mi país estamos viviendo una crisis muy grande. Perú está en una crisis muy grande. A los defensores, defensoras, a los que reclamamos nuestros derechos colectivos fundamentales, el derecho a la vida, nos están matando. Nuestros hermanos andinos están muriendo ya casi 70. A pesar que una presidenta mujer no tiene un pensamiento, no tiene un corazón de cristiano, no tiene un pensamiento de madre, es que yo tengo mis hijos, o poner el zapato del hermano, de la hermana, y decir, basta, ¿no? Esta población tiene derecho a vivir, tiene derecho a protestar su propio derecho que le corresponde, pero no es al inverso. Parece que la gente no está pensando con el cerebro y el corazón, lo ven dinero. El dinero es bueno, pero no todo es felicidad. Si no cuidamos el agua, no protegemos el agua que es vida, no cuidamos nuestra madre naturaleza, donde nosotros sembramos para poner en la mesa, para comer, para que nuestros hijos se alimenten, pues no estamos haciendo nada. Los grandes edificios no nos dan de comer, pero nuestra madre naturaleza sí nos da de comer. Nuestros ríos sí nos dan de beber todos los días, que nos mantenemos con agua. Desde que nosotras nos fecundan, ¿no? En la barriga, vivimos en agua, crecemos en la barriga de nuestra madre. Y por eso desde la creación tenemos que cuidarla, tenemos que defenderla, que salvarla a esta madre naturaleza, a esos ríos, pozas, lagunas. Ver que es vida, que es una vida más fundamental. Muchísimas gracias con todos y todas.
Muchísimas gracias, Mariluz, y nos solidarizamos mucho con la situación de Perú, así que tienes todo nuestro cariño y solidaridad. A continuación vamos a escuchar a Mercedes Concepción. Creo que tenemos hoy el gusto de tener a dos países que están impulsando muchísimo los derechos de la naturaleza. Entonces, primero quiero agradecerles a los representantes de los dos países que se encuentran aquí por estar hoy. Voy a leer tu biografía de Mercedes en inglés. Mercedes is the Minister of Environment of Panama. His Excellency is an agricultural engineer and a lawyer. Mr. Concepcion has been a big promoter of the rights of nature and has received various recognitions for his contribution to the environment management and approval for environmental laws by NGOs and organizations such as the IUCN, Viva, Panorama Católico, and the Environmental Commission of the National Assembly. It's a pleasure for us to have you here today. Y, señor ministro, queremos preguntarle algunos temas. Uno de ellos es que nos cuente acerca de la biodiversidad de Panamá y por qué Panamá dio este importante paso de reconocer una ley que reconozca los derechos de la naturaleza, de cómo eso tiene que ver justamente con los ODS, y además cómo crees que esta ley puede cambiar la relación que Panamá tiene con la naturaleza. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por invitar a Panamá a este importante conversatorio sobre los derechos de la naturaleza. Panamá es un país muy biodiverso y por ello el país ha sentido el compromiso de proteger nuestros recursos naturales. Somos uno de los 3 países del mundo que somos carbono negativo. Conservamos aún el 68% de nuestros bosques. Hasta hace poco decidimos proteger océanos, el 54% de nuestros océanos son áreas protegidas y el 33% del territorio de la tierra es área protegida. El 35% son comarcas indígenas en nuestro país, con 6 comarcas. Y de allí pues se ve la importancia que nuestro país le da a nuestros recursos y a nuestra gente. Hace un año aprobamos la ley sobre los derechos de la naturaleza. En la misma se contemplaba que un año después entraba en vigencia. Entró en vigencia hace unos días, el 24 de febrero del 2022. Ya Panamá es uno de los pocos países del mundo que cuenta con una ley sobre los derechos de la naturaleza. Y esta ley era necesaria, porque a pesar de que mi país tiene muchas leyes y normas ambientales, a nivel constitucional la naturaleza no tenía derechos. La ley sí le otorga muchos aspectos para conservar todos nuestros recursos naturales. Pero qué bien reforzar el ordenamiento jurídico ambiental para encaminarnos al desarrollo sostenible y cumplir los 17 Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Sin una base jurídica fuerte, los países no podrán ejecutar los 17 ODS. Necesitamos normas ambientales y darle ese derecho que se merece la naturaleza como nos merecemos los humanos con los derechos humanos. La naturaleza tiene derechos. Y invitamos a todos los países del mundo que tomen el ejemplo de los pocos países en Latinoamérica, creo que somos 3 nada más, que hemos decidido a través de leyes y constituciones darle ese derecho a la naturaleza y que los estados también y todas las personas respeten y garanticen esos derechos a todos los componentes de la naturaleza. Nosotros nos sentimos muy satisfechos y estamos reforzando también nuestras fiscalías ambientales. Estamos exigiendo también que se organicen los tribunales ambientales para que en organismos jurídicos especializados se traten estos temas ambientales y nos estamos preparando desde ya para implementar esa ley de los derechos a la naturaleza. Con esta ley, ahora cualquier especie de fauna silvestre, un felino, un árbol, un águila arpía, que es el águila nacional de mi país, puede a través de otra persona o de una persona demandar a personas naturales o jurídicas. Esa es una gran ventaja. Ahora nos podemos, sin ese derecho humano, que es muy importante, ambiental, sin ese derecho a la naturaleza, están indefensos. Nuestras especies, nuestra biodiversidad está indefensa. Por más que normas ambientales que tengamos, pero si no hay un reconocimiento constitucional y legal, va a ser difícil también tratar la defensa de la naturaleza a través de los tribunales y que sean castigados los que atenten, los que exterminen, los que contaminen nuestras aguas, nuestros ríos, nuestros mares, los que depreden o depradan nuestra fauna silvestre en los ríos, en nuestras montañas, que cumplen un rol muy importante en el ecosistema. Nosotros queremos también mencionarles que esta ley le da el derecho de existir, persistir y regenerar los ciclos de la naturaleza, los ciclos vitales. Derecho a la diversidad de la vida de los seres, elementos y ecosistemas que lo componen. Derecho a la restauración oportuna y efectiva de los sistemas de vida afectados por las actividades humanas directa o indirectamente. derecho a existir libre de contaminación de cualquiera de sus componentes, así como de residuos tóxicos y radioactivos generados por las actividades humanas. Esta ley va a complementar ese ordenamiento jurídico que tenemos en nuestros países y esperemos que dentro del Ministerio de Ambiente, la cual lidero en Panamá, seamos los primeros en llevar casos por violaciones a los derechos de la naturaleza a los tribunales de justicia de mi país. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, mucha suerte y estaremos pendientes y queriendo apoyar en lo que se pueda. Muchísimas gracias. Now we're going to listen to Ursula Arendt. His Excellency Mr. Ursula Arendt is Deputy Prime Minister of Aruba, as well as Minister of Transport, Integrity, Nature, and Senior Affairs. He shifted his career from a background of tourism to the public sector and the specific ambition to introduce the rights of nature in Aruba. I have known him before as he was a minister, and it's a pleasure to have him today telling us what's happening in Aruba and what we can expect with the rights of nature in Aruba. Minister Arendt, we would like to also ask you to talk a little bit about what are the threats that a country, an insular country, is living in this triple planetary emergency that we're living at this moment, and what's the importance of recognizing the rights of nature for an island that is suffering the risk of climate change, and what opportunities, of course, is Aruba going to be dealing with the rights of nature. Thank you for being here today.
Natalia, thank you very much. For me, it's an honor, and I'm humbled to be sharing this room with so many Earth defenders. And I promised Tom that by the end of the panel today, he will be shaking my hand as well. So when he listed the list of countries, so I said, by the end of this panel, we will shake hands. As Natalia mentioned, coming from the tourism industry, my background, I knew that sooner or later, my own principles were going to collide with each other, because I stopped seeing the tourism industry as an industry, and what I realized is what we were doing was exploiting nature. We are not in the tourism business, but we are in the nature business. That is what Aruba was doing, and the hotel I was the director of, they provided me with the opportunity to make sure that what we were doing wasn't causing any negative effects on nature. And sooner or later, in 2018, I started a campaign for a petition to introduce a moratorium on our island for no new developments of new hotels. And if we consider nature as a contribution to our into our GDP as an industry, if we nature will be the fifth domestic economic producer for to our GDP. So that's how much the big role nature plays in the economy of Aruba. Aruba is a touristic island. If many of you don't know, we are 180 square kilometers. And like Natalia asked, for a small island, a dot on the world map, we consider ourselves a big ocean state. And when it comes to the triple planetary emergency, and it comes to climate change, the tourists come to Aruba because of our white sandy beaches and turquoise water. On a yearly basis, we are mining for sand in our waters, territorial waters, to replenish the beaches because of the erosion that is taking place constantly. So these are the effects of climate change that as a small island, we are already seeing the effects. 40% of our residents live in 1 meter sea level rise. So my ministry, which consists of transport, integrity, nature, and senior affairs, 80% of my ministry is affected by climate change. When we talk about elder citizens, they are the first one affected by climate change because of the geographical location on our island. In 2012, Aruba, because of the 4 storms that passed in our region, even though we are below the hurricane belt, we received unprecedented rainfall. And because of that, we noticed that we are not prepared, not even for a rainfall that can cause so much damage. Imagine when we talk about flooding. When it comes to pollution, we had a landfill that existed for 70 years, 70 years. And it is located very close to our waters. And it was not only causing harm to all the neighbors that were living in close proximity, but also to our marine life. Because it is close to our water, it is also negatively impacting our marine life. But I'm honored and also glad to say that even though I'm here, we consist of 4 countries, 1 kingdom of the Netherlands. Aruba is the first island in the Dutch Caribbean that closed its landfill. As per January the 1st of this year, our landfill is closed. What we did as government, we took a step back, allow the private sector to identify the waste streams that they want to take ownership of, and process this into raw material that we can use locally or raw material that we can export. So by doing so, we are right now in the 3rd month of execution, and I think we are doing a great contribution to nature as well, from limiting the negative impacts of having a landfill on our island. Additionally to that, in 2018, we did a study on our wastewater treatment plant, and we know that because of the nutrients that is also being released because of the wastewater treatment plant, it also has a negative impact on all the marine life that surrounds our island. As of the end of this month, we are privatizing the entire wastewater treatment plant. And because the government doesn't have the financial mechanism and the financials to develop a new wastewater treatment plant, and after we privatize by the end of this month, in a total of 18 to 24 months, we will have a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant that will also stop the negative effects on nature. Additionally to that, we also made some impactful commitments, not only here during the water conference, but since last year during the UNOC, the United Nations Ocean Conference. One of our commitments was to introduce the rights of nature in Aruba. We also committed to introduce an island-round marine park, and also the introduction of a National Climate Resiliency Council. As of last year, November, the Climate Council has been introduced. And right now, what I'm here today to talk about is that Aruba is positioning itself as the 2nd country to introduce rights of nature after Ecuador in our constitution. We will be the 4th to have it in our legislation, and we will be the 1st to have the rights of ocean included in this legislation. On April 22nd, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Mother Earth, Earth Day, and on that day, the legislation is going to leave my ministry to go through its legal process that it has to go through in Aruba, to go to the Department of Legislation and Legal Affairs. From there, it will go to the Advisory Council, that they will review the legislation and make their recommendations and comments. And after that, it can go to the Parliament for voting and approval. So we will need your support as well, because in the Parliament of Aruba, we have never amended our constitution before. And to amend the constitution, we need 2/3 of Parliament to amend it. So we count on the support of the Earth Law Center and also of GAN, so that we can entice all members of Parliament to unanimously vote for the change in our amendment on our constitution, so the rights of nature can also be included. We are, even though we are a small island, we are taking our responsibility, and we believe that by doing this, we are sending a bold statement to the world that we are going to make sure that nature has its rights. Our main objective is to bring harmony between humans and nature. The reason why is we need nature to live. Nature doesn't need us. So we are taking our responsibility, and to our two ladies sitting right next to me, mis hermanos de líderes de la comunidad indígena, yo les quiero decir que tu lucha es mi lucha y es la lucha de todos nosotros. Y ustedes pueden contar con nuestro apoyo también. ¡Ajo! And I want to finish by stating, nature nurtures, yet we must act to nurture nature. And I cannot think of a more structural way to achieve this than including the rights of nature and rights of ocean in the Constitution of Aruba. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ursula, and we will be definitely supporting and celebrating the recognition of the rights of nature in Aruba. Thank you for that and for your hard work. We're going to be listening to a youth representative right now. We're going to be listening to Rafaela Durante. She is a Gardens Hub coordinator, and she's also the co-founder of the Gardens Youth Hub for the Rights of Nature. Rafa, you can also bring us the voice of the youth to this program. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for having me here. As Nancy said, I'm going to be speaking and representative of youth. So yes, youth hold unique capacities right now to shift the current anthropocentric paradigm towards a future in which the Earth community can live in harmony. We now are born into an Earth that is overburdened with pollution and polluted waterways and complete ecosystems and homes that are devastated. Access to a healthy environment is now a privilege, and access from nature to a healthy environment is also a privilege. We face growing crises around the world, climate change, biodiversity, and various violations to human and indigenous rights. New conventions keep being created, new conferences keep being created. We're all sitting here, but conservation targets keep being not met, and actions are insufficient to prevent further degradation and pollution. Our future depends on restoring the health of our planet. We are nature, and business as usual is no longer an option. The United Nations World Charter for Nature from 1982 acknowledged that inherent connection between humans and nature and the responsibility of humans when it comes to conservation, establishing a code of conduct and essentially the principles of conservation. And it also said by ensuring that the charter recognizes that in the decision-making process, man's need can only be met by ensuring the proper functioning of natural systems. And here I want to highlight this because it's important to talk about language. Language is important, and introducing this inclusive language in everything we talk in the Sustainable Development Goals is essential to changing our relationship with nature. So, as I said, there is a growing awareness of the importance of language and its role in determining our ethical and moral considerations when it comes to Mother Earth. It's imperative to evolve our perceptions and values, and with that, transition our language and governance structures to represent the interconnectedness with nature. We, the youth, urge action and implementation of the rights of nature framework, and especially the rights of water in the UN Water Agenda and in the Sustainable Development Goals. We hope to live in a future where humans live in harmony with the rest of the Earth community, and we can pass this on to future generations. Thank you. Thank you, Rafa, for that important message from future generations, even the future generations. And finally, we're going to be listening to Constanza Prieto. Constanza is a lawyer, founder, and director of the Legal Department of Latin America at Earth Law Center. She is a leading expert on rights of nature in Latin America, mainly focused on protecting and conserving rivers and marine ecosystems in the Americas. And Constanza, if you can tell us a little bit about the link of the conversation of these topics of rights of nature with the SDGs. Thank you so much for this final comment.
Thank you, for being here. We are very glad to have all this coverage here about right of nature. What I can say, like closing word here is, well, nature or right of nature are the missing element in this World Water Action Agenda. Rivers, ocean, and other water sources are voiceless entities. Nature and its elements are not considered by themselves as stakeholders to influence their own water agenda. But in this panel today, I hear the voice of nature speaking to the experience of science, also environmental advocates, indigenous representatives, lawyers, and very helpful governments too. Representing this voice make us guardians and responsible advocating for the consideration of the intrinsic value of the rivers and other water sources, the protection, restoration, and ensuring the access to its environmental benefit for the ecosystem and also for the future generation. Right of nature commands decision makers to recognize intrinsic value and also inform the legislation by the precautionary principle. Right of nature facilitates transparency and the participation of the people in the decision of environment. And right of nature is a cohesive element and that not only protect nature itself, but also the right of the people and also the right of the indigenous people. What as I'm sorry. We as Alliance are committed today is to develop and integrate a very broad partnership, a catalyzed legislative reform based in the right of nature framework, and also implement and help the state to implement this framework in their management plan, in the secondary legislation, and also informing principles for decision makers. Finally, we want to escalate this right of nature to the international level, the international framework, like happened in the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We want to inform every treaty, international treaty with this ecocentric vision. Thank you so much. And
thank you very much to our speakers. I would also like to inform our audience today that as a group, as a coalition, as an alliance, we have been working during this time of the UN Water Conference to include some commitments to make sure that water, the right to water, is also included in the UN Water Agenda. We have been able to include a commitment as a group. We have also included today a statement that is called Rights of Water, a missing piece in the water agenda. We definitely believe that we cannot only talk about the SDGs, we need to be even more bold and talk about the right to water and recognize and acknowledge what is happening around the world. I like to think about this idea of this acupuncture that is happening around the world with like more than 37 countries recognizing the rights of nature, not only at a constitutional level, like Ecuador, hopefully Aruba, so hopefully Chile. So I see some of our allies from Chile around, but also a level of a law level like Panama, like Bolivia, at a city level, like we have some cities in Brazil, we have some cities in Mexico that recognize it. But I today really want to recognize what is happening with the water ecosystems. Really, what has been happening with rivers. Want to be very aware of that. It's really important, and I like to recognize that back in 2009, the first river in Vilcabamba was recognized as a subject of right. And then we have many other initiatives like the Rio Trato in Colombia, India, the river in Bangladesh, the Magpie River. I see our representatives from Canada also here. There were two rivers in the Ponca Nation. The Mar Menor in Spain last year was considered a subject of rights. And we also have, of course, like other ecosystems like Los Cedros, Cayamemataje, the mangroves, and other ecosystems like the Amazon that has been considered as subject of rights. Really, the rights of nature movement is a movement that is expanding, that is getting everywhere, and the United Nations in this building, they need to listen to what the people in the world are saying. It's not enough to just think about the right to a healthy environment, but it's important to recognize that nature is alive, it has its inherent rights, and the right to water needs to be recognized. And that's what we're doing here today. That's what we're aiming to influence the water agenda to include that statement that the need to recognize the inherent rights, and bringing together this amazing panel of scientists, of indigenous leaders, of organizations, of government representatives. I hope we're giving that message. And we have 3 minutes. We know that the time is really, really limited in this space, so they're about to kick us out. And we would like to just have we have time for like 2 or 3 messages of what are we telling the UN, especially about the right to water and the rights of nature. I want to first give the opportunity to someone in our public. I know that we have amazing representatives from all over the world, Chile, Brazil, Canada, that are also here with us. If you want to give us a message right now of what we want to say to the UN, it is the time we have 3 minutes.
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
Microphone, please.
Microphone, yeah.
Firstly, I would like to say it's a great privilege to be here and to hear all of your stories and to see everybody come together to discuss this agenda. But there is something that I'm slightly confused about, and that is why this meeting was not first on the agenda, the whole conference. And so I think my feeling is it would be good to push this up the agenda. Generally, I would like to see that. I feel this is one of the most important things for us all coming together.
Thank you.
Can you please speak in the microphone? There's one right behind you.
Eduardo Mosqueda de México, de una organización no gubernamental. Creo que lo que mencionó el ministro es muy importante que se le presione a gobiernos de todo el mundo y de la región principalmente para que se comprometan al fortalecimiento a la creación de fiscalías y tribunales especializados que actúen de manera oficiosa, de manera automática ante violaciones graves al medio ambiente y los derechos de la naturaleza, y no se le cargue mala responsabilidad a las personas defensoras y a las comunidades, porque no solamente hay una desproporción de poderes entre las megacorporaciones y estas comunidades, sino también porque nos están o las están matando a las personas defensoras. Entonces es importante que le apostemos a eso. Si tienen un modelo sobre cómo va a funcionar y cómo va a tener un poquito también de accountability este modelo que están ustedes creado, con mayor participación ciudadana, con mayor transparencia, con mayores indicadores de mejora abiertos. Entonces, eso, de oficio, de automático, y que no se le cargue mala responsabilidad a las personas defensoras y comunidades, sino que los estados creen estos modelos y puedan compartir esas grandes experiencias. Gracias.
Hola, muchas gracias. Soy Vanessa de Brasil y quería noticiar que ahora estamos trabajando. Monte estuve hoy por la mañana con nosotros del movimiento. Noticia que ahora estamos trabajando con el reconocimiento de los derechos de un río amazónico que se llama Lajes y que está en una comunidad indígena, la comunidad Igarapé-Lajes, y que en el nivel federal, en el nivel mayor de la ley, ahora tenemos más esperanza con las lideranzas indígenas en Brasil. Hay ahora un ministerio de los pueblos indígenas en Brasil, los pueblos originarios. Gracias por su lucha, gracias.
Yo quiero pedir al mundo entero para que tenga en consideración todas las propuestas que estamos haciendo y que defendamos que hay una ley en defensa de nuestra madre naturaleza, porque la naturaleza, los humedales que nosotros tenemos en nuestra Amazonía es el pulmón de vida de nosotros y de todos. Por eso pido que se considere un punto muy principal y vital para todo el país, para todo el mundo entero. Yo vengo de la Amazonía, tenemos muchos humedales, pero también esos humedales están desmayándose por la heredera, y entonces por eso hay que ser puntual en nuestra. Quisiera que consideren mi petición como lideresa indígena Jucama, Jucamiria. Muchísimas gracias.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Elvin Sandoval Gallardo, yo soy dirigente de una organización de la Patagonia chilena, venimos de bastante al sur, donde todavía, a diferencia de otras experiencias que hemos ido reconociendo, tenemos agua en abundancia, pero no exento de amenazas. Tenemos una amenaza tremenda de la industria minera, de la industria forestal, de la industria agrícola, de la industria inmobiliaria también, que quiere hacerse con nuestros bienes naturales comunes. Vimos una discusión constitucional hace muy poco tiempo donde intentamos fuertemente incluir los derechos de la naturaleza en nuestra nueva constitución para dejar atrás una constitución muy neoliberal que ve el medio ambiente solo como una despensa o como un basurero. Y la verdad es que, bueno, perdimos ese debate constitucional el 4 de septiembre del año pasado y hoy día vamos de nuevo y queremos impulsar nuevamente en este debate constitucional la defensa del medio ambiente, la defensa de las comunidades indígenas, la defensa de la naturaleza y la defensa de la vida. Nosotros somos parte del movimiento Aysén Reserva de Vida y creemos que ese es un modelo de desarrollo que tenemos que replicar en Chile para llegar también a un planeta reserva de vida. Agradecemos instancias como esta, donde podemos participar, donde también se nos ha invitado, y también llamamos a todos a que puedan también solidarizar con nuestro territorio. Hoy día la industria minera está impactando fuertemente nuestro territorio, la industria forestal está generando grandes incendios todos los veranos en nuestro territorio, y en específico nosotros queremos empujar la protección de nuestros humedales, nuestras turberas en nuestra región, y también empujar la declaratoria de la Patagonia como patrimonio natural de la humanidad. Agradecemos esta instancia y esperamos también la solidaridad de todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
I want to thank our brothers from Chile, from Mexico, as the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. We have also promoted the International Rights Tribunal. We have many of our judges here at the goal to having our judges. We were defending the rights of the Patagonia and talking about the waters. We were just in Mexico last week, defending the rights of the cenotes and the caverns that are threatened by the Maya train. So I think that there's like, water is connecting us, and water is giving us a really strong message saying that water is her inherent rights to be recognized. So I thank you all for being here and for really promoting and pushing towards this amazing recognition and to this amazing vibrant movement that is pushing towards the right to water and the right to nature. Thank you so much for coming today.